Good evening, James McHale with ABC News. 3 years of work on a school funding overhaul have come to an abrupt halt. The government is abandoning Labor's plan known as the Gonski model, and with it goes more than $1 billion in funding. The Education Minister is blaming Labor, but also appears to have broken his own promise in taking the U-turn. Here's Chief Political Correspondent Mark Simpkin.
For a government that promised no surprises, this is a big one. Gonski's gone. Its deals will be ditched, its spending slashed.
The shortened shambles that I've inherited is not an egg that I can put back together again.
It's been quite a journey. The coalition initially panned Gonski as a Konski, only to embrace it on the eve of the election.
As far as school funding is concerned, Kevin Rudd and I are on a unity ticket.
The Shadow Minister was even more explicit.
So you can vote Liberal or Labor and you'll get exactly the same amount of funding for your school.
Asked to repeat that pledge this afternoon, Christopher Pyne wouldn't or couldn't.
As has become very apparent since we were elected, the cupboard is very bare.
I'm surprised Christopher Pyne just doesn't say that the cat ate their homework after the election. I mean, this is a government who said there'd be no excuses, and now they're trying to find every pathetic excuse under the book.
Labor promised an extra $2.8 billion over the Ford estimates. The coalition argues there's a $1.2 billion shortfall, so the new government can only provide $1.6 billion. It looks like that'll be shared among all the states and territories, so the states that signed up under Labor could get less than they bargained for.
We have a signed agreement with the Commonwealth Government. It's for set dollars, and New South Wales is not going to settle for less.
It's now up to Christopher Pyne and Tony Abbott to deliver on their side of the deal, and they made a promise before the last election. They better not break it.
Nothing changes next year, but in 2015 it's back to the blackboard. The government will draw up a new funding formula and renegotiate its deals with the states. The talks start on Friday when Christopher Pyne sits down with his state and territory counterparts. It won't be pretty.
The Federal Education Minister is dictating this debate through the media and not doing what any other reasonable minister, state or federal, would do, which is pick up the phone and explain what the hell's going on.
And that's from a Liberal. Mark Simpkin, ABC News, Canberra.
In a marked contrast with other state premiers, Colin Barnett has welcomed the scrapping of Gonski. WA refused to sign up to the plan despite the hundreds of millions of dollars on offer. As Jessica Strutt explains, the state will now be chasing a better deal from the Abbott government.
When Premier Colin Barnett refused to sign up to Gonski, he had two objections. The Labor government's first offer of $200 million in extra funding was too low, and even when it was upped to $600 million, the Premier argued other states were still getting a better deal. But the main issue was control. He refused to have Canberra telling WA how to run its schools. With Federal Education Minister Christopher Pyne promising not to interfere, that issue is now gone.
The new Commonwealth Government is right to go back to square one, keep the money on the table, but you must have a consistent approach. You can't have the Commonwealth discriminating between states.
But how much money will actually be left on the table is unclear. The $1.2 billion set aside by Labor for non-signing states is gone. And Mr Pyne says while other states will get their promised allocation in 2014, WA will have to negotiate a deal with the federal government.
I like to think that they will actually see some reason here, and they'll actually provide an equitable distribution of the pie to all states, not just to those on the East Coast.
The State School Teachers Union, already protesting state cuts, is predicting a tougher time ahead.
It's a very confusing time, I think. We certainly do need resolution on federal funding. We've got no idea of where we're going in Western Australia, and that needs to be resolved.
Peter Collier will go to Sydney at the end of the week to begin working out what funding the state will get.